Welcome back, guys, for our final round of Stuttgart Regionals. I'm Alex. I'm back yet again with Mike here beside me. Really looking forward to this matchup. I think we've seen these two decks in action a number of times this tournament so far. It'll be really interesting to see what we've got with both these players in their winning in.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of players do very well so far. We're on round 9 of the Swiss.
Yep.
So we'll be carrying on round 2 tomorrow from round 10. But at this stage, there's a lot of unfamiliar players making it up to the high ranks, getting 8 wins, 7 wins.
Yeah.
But we're going to be looking down a little bit lower at those players who really need a win right now to make sure they get into day 2.
Yeah, we've got our one and only that we've just been interviewing, and you guys have seen in the interviews, Nico Alabas. Playing a version of Lost Box that we're about to showcase yet again, up against Edwin Mesman, playing the Mew deck that we've also seen a number of times this weekend so far as well, playing the, I was going to say the Path version, but it's not just Path, but he's playing the 4DTE Mew list.
I guess you could call it the Disruption version.
Yeah,
it's got quite a heavy Marnie, there's a Roxanne in there. The whole idea being, if I can skip a turn of my opponent through Disruption, then I might get into an advantageous position. But we have seen a lot of Mew VMAX, and it has generally favoured, especially the people who are winning, this more disruptive route with passing.
Yeah, definitely so. But not alongside that Path, Edwin is actually also playing 2 Lost Cities as well. So a card we haven't really featured much, if at all, I don't think.
We had it. We had one when you were having your little break.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And interestingly, it was very key in this matchup because it was against Lost Box, and it took away a lot of really important attackers. So the reason why we're talking about the stadium, you might think, why are you talking about the stadiums when we've got so many other amazing cards in the decks? And the reason being, this Lost Box deck we're up against has no stadium bounce, and that's quite common right now with Lost Box.
Yeah, because it doesn't really need to function necessarily using some of those stadiums. We've seen it in a few, like Joe Bernard played a Pokestop list earlier alongside Magma Basin, but that was his way of building it. But in Nico's list, there is no real out to it, so we could see the Lost City really stick. As we go now into our game 1 of our round 9, final round of the day of our Stuttgart regionals, and we see Edwin, it looks like, is going to be kicking things off in this matchup, in this winning in.
And kicking things off with a Battle VIP pass, the dream start for a Mew. And you do see there in the prizes a Rotom Phone, a card that has generally been taken out of a lot of Mew lists, but it is still a very good synergistic card. It can also work quite well with the top decking, you know, setting up for future Marnies, sort of similar to how the Oranguru plays in other decks. So it does make you a bit disruption-proof. Then on the other side, a Zeraora start, which has been so useful to counter that Lugia V-Star deck, especially as Dunsparce has started to be unfavoured in a lot of decks. People are taking it out, and now the Zeraora with a Choice Belt on does one-hit knock out that V-Star, but in this situation, it's not going to be very effective against Mew.
But still is a fantastic starter. It has free retreat, which is amazing to have. Of course, there's plenty of switch outs that Lost Box will have as well, and scoop up nets to be able to get those confies into the position. But having free retreat on any Pokemon is great, and then having free retreat on an attacker is even more fantastic. So, you know, lots of different options. There's just a pass by Edwin after getting a bit of a board set up, knowing he can't really attack right now because he's playing the 4DT version, but he's gone first as well. Nico, straight away with the Luminium V onto the bench to get a supporter.
I mean, you say a supporter. We all know what supporter it's going to be. On the count of 3, we say it together.
Oh
1, 2, 3. Chorus Experiment. There we go. We all knew it was coming. So key at the start for Lost Box to kick things off, and I'm sure everyone in chat was also thinking the same thing. The main reason the Luminium features in there is to try and work in that way. It can also work as an attacker. You don't generally want to play with Vs on your bench in the Lost Box matchup because it does clog up your bench, give away potential 2-prizer as well. So that attack, putting it back into the deck is quite useful. But we haven't spoken about one key card that can often come up in this matchup for Lost Box and is one of the key factors that gives it a favourable Mew matchup.
Yeah, one card that Nico isn't playing, from my view, is that Drapion V that we have seen sort of come into effect and just being a bit of a easy, splashable card to counter Mew decks. I mean, even just Drapion being able to attack without any energy cost, but dealing so much damage and then hitting for weakness. It's such a viable attacker in this matchup. But Nico hasn't played it before in sort of Giratina or Lost Box decks and has chosen to omit it again. So it'll be really interesting to see how he's going to navigate some of the prizes that he's going to be looking to take. Of course, still will look to do the 2-hit KOs. Does have the big boy Snorlax with a thumping snore attack, 180. Of course, still has the Cramorant dealing 110. So does have a few options there. Is playing the water version, so is using the Radiant Greninja to draw more cards with concealed cards, which also means Lumineon can also attack to put itself back into the deck, so it's not a target for later turns.
You speak about the energy types as well. 4 capturers, a great addition to the deck, helps with the consistency. And we've seen sort of 2 different ends of the spectrum at this event with the Lost Box. You see decks like this, which have the Zeraora, really focusing on the Lugia matchup, and then we see decks like what we saw earlier with Joe Bernard and a few other decks doing quite well is that Raihan Twin Energy build, where they're looking to power up, without the need for Mirage Gate, those big hitting Charizards and Snorlaxes, and looking to take big numbers using the Lost engine. And both of them are very viable. Both of them work better against certain matchups and not against others. And in this case, the build that Nico's got here would rather not play against Mew VMAX. And so in this case, going to have to find a more interesting, intricate route, probably looking to spread damage across the Genesects to get that win.
Yeah, definitely so. And just a reminder, both players on 5-1-2 records. So 5 wins put them on 15 points. Because it's 3 points per win, of course, and 2 ties each, putting them on 17, and they both need 19 to make it through to day 2, and only one of them can do so, but does mean we need to see a conclusion in this round 9 game here. So here we are. There was a 1 flower selecting as well, going into 3, the scoop up net, bringing up the second Comfey. Now Flower selecting once again, putting him up to 4, and now giving himself an opportunity to use Cramorant as an attacker. Holding on to that Mirage Gate, knowing to our prize as well, having, I'm sure, done his deck searches there. Yeah,
the Cramorant with the Lost Provisions ability means that when you got 4 in the Lost Zone, the attack is free of charge, no attack cost, so Spit Innocently will be able to get 110 for no energy attachment. And it does look like a pass, no ability to retreat, really doing that final flower selecting there, looking for a switch out, nothing available, and so it does mean that 110 is not going to be sprinkled onto the board, and that is key. Getting that down to get some damage on the Mew would have meant it was a potential target in the future for something like a Snorlax with a Choice Belt.
Yeah, although we're looking over at Edwin's turn here as well. He's had to play that switch card just to kind of get cards out of his hand so he can start using that Fusion Strike system to draw up to 4. Has had to attach the Choice Belt and plays the boss as well. Just trying to find a way to target that Lumineon as soon as possible. Does look like it's going to be a Fusion Strike system for 2. Doesn't hit the energy, and not really playable cards there, I don't think I see, because that Battle VIP pass, and it looks like a cross switcher as well.
Yeah, that's the problem with Mew. When you're getting in these early stages, if you don't have ways to get rid of cards, and he's going to cross-switcher back. Is that the Greninja?
He's gone for the Greninja now.
So Lumineon no longer a target, and this is kind of a safer route, a safer play, get it out of the way. But then, like you said, not really ideal for Mew to be using all of these switch-outs this early on
and
to start powering up.
Another 2 there. Just a quick ball, trying to maybe look for another Genesect perhaps. To continue drawing through. It's a bit of a slow turn right now, but we'll see how this next Fusion Strike system is going to pay off for Edwin, if at all.
Yeah, you mentioned about all these switch outs and looking for that energy, and there is only 1 switch card. There is the 4 cross switches. Outside of that, the potential to Boss's Orders up a Genesect and start sprinkling with Sableye would force energy as a retreat method. So starting to take away those switch resources for the Mew VMAX. Although it'd be important at this stage to keep on tempo, it could potentially affect the future turns once the Sableye comes into play.
And there's an important card that he's just drawn into there. So now has 5 cards in hand, but there's the Forest Seal Stone, giving Edwin an opportunity to essentially use that computer search type or 1 card search for anything that you want from your deck and get him that energy should he choose to do so. And there it is. There's that ability being used there on the Forest Seal Stone attached to the Genesect, that Star Alchemy,
I don't think
which
I've
is amazing.
ever heard the name of it being said. Normally people say the Forest Seal Stone only, don't they? Star Alchemy, the ability there.
It is fantastic, considering we've also seen with Arceus being able to take 2 from its ability name as well, which is
Starbirth.
There you go.
There's a lot of star. You know, I kept thinking there's a lot of stars, and I realised it is a V-star ability. So it makes sense they've all got star in the name. But we do see that being used early on, which is not ideal. You don't want to have to use it, but it
No.
gives you that ability to keep on tempo if you need to.
Yeah, it's normally one of those cards where you just want to make sure you pick up. Sometimes when you have a path against you, you're able to just use it because you can use it under path because it's not an ability of the Pokemon itself. It's an ability on the actual Forest Seal Stone, and that gives you an opportunity to then just be able to pick out and get out of any troubling scenarios when locked on the path, which has typically been a bit of a crux to Mew.
Yeah, the Mew with the paths tend to play a lot of lost vacuums as well, where they can lost vacuum their own path, start drawing, replace the path. But a little bit of a thinner package here for Edwin, only 2 path, 1 lost vacuum, where we saw some lists earlier on where it was more like 3 paths, 4 vacuums. Yep. And the vacuum being quite a good insta-playable as well, because you can start getting rid of tools that you don't need anymore, like the Forest Seal Stone once it's been used. You can get rid of any stadium and replace it, so it's a way to start getting cards out of your hand. But yeah, this list more going down a traditional double turbo energy Mew with a little bit of a disruption package in there.
Yeah, for sure. And there's the first prize obviously taken in this matchup here. Nico is now using Flower Selecting to push himself up to the 7. The activation of that Mirage Gate now, as it's just being played, now sort of just choosing and identifying which energies to kind of go for here. Also remember, it still has that kind of very squishy Luminium V on the bench, which is always going to be a bit of a worry sometimes. Yeah, it looks like he's trying to find a way to maybe just get it out of range from a Mew. Also giving himself an opportunity to later use it, maybe to grab a bit of disruption himself, like the Roxanne or Raihan when he needs a certain card to be able to return swing on an attacker. So yeah, really interesting play here from Nico.
I assume he has the water in his hand if he's putting the Psychic and Lightning Energy down.
Yeah, he does play 4 copies of the Water Energy, so I imagine it's there. I can't imagine Nico not going for the Water Energy if he didn't already have one in hand. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt for the time being. He's a very seasoned player, of course. Regular top finishes across Europe, across the world. OCIC winner as well. So yeah, we'll give him. There you go.
There
just to confirm.
We should put full trust in. It's just it is always a question in my head. But then equally, like you said, players of this level of experience, they don't miss that kind of thing. Especially, you saw the thought process as well. It wasn't just a insta choosing, oh, I better do Lightning and Psychic to thin it out. I've got a water somewhere. It was checked, and that's something that a lot of players will overlook sometimes. That top players haven't just got this crazy ability where they've got a memory and remember where everything is. They do make multiple checks, and if they're not sure of something, they check their hand, they check their discard pile, they check their deck, just to be sure of their decision making. And
there's the Aqua return for 150 damage because it had the choice belt attached as well to that Mew, so that has 160 HP left now. Does promote, it was considering initially promoting the Cramorant, but realized it also has a free retreat Pokemon in Zeraora to be able to promote as well.
And if it gets knocked out, it's not the end of the world.
Then it's exactly the same because he also has the Confe with the air balloon as well. But it's better than any of the other Pokemon to use. So just applying some pressure, applying some damage. Remember, when Nico takes a knockout, he's going to be taking generally a minimum 2 prizes unless he's knocking out an Oricorio. So he's still okay from a position as a single prize deck to really sort of keep up on the prize race.
Yeah, and then the advantage you've got with Mew VMAX into the single prize matchups is if they do put damage on the Mew VMAX, there is a way to remove it from play using...
Cramming a cram for 4 heads. Sorry.
Yeah, using that Mew's attack. So copying the Mew's attack, which will allow it to Psychic Leap, and that's why we see the Mew being placed down after that search.
Yep.
I was thinking maybe you go for the Oricorio to start reducing the damage, but really needs that Mew V on the bench to open up the Psychic Leap, which only does 50 damage when you've got the double turbo energy on.
Yeah, so we'll need double power tablet to be able to take a knockout on this Zeraora, which has 100 HP. Again, you know, a lot of these Pokemon, because of its general quite weak from the Conphase only having 70 HP, maybe just a 1 tablet occasionally would be enough for a Psychic Leap. But in this scenario, it looks like there's just a Marnie being played as well. But in this scenario with the Active Zeraora, a double tablet will be required here. But, of course, we'll just kind of nullify Nico's last turn and remove that damage from the active position. So, yeah, out comes the Rotom Phone. Being able to look at the top 5 and place 1 card to the top of the deck, shuffle the rest back in, of course. But then again, just being able to use Fusion Strike System to draw into it if when he needs to.
And he got the power tablet there, so he can take that out, and the advantage you got with Power Tablet is that it's insta-playable as well, so it will start helping with that Fusion Strike system draw from the Genesect. I didn't quite see which one he went for there with the Rotom Phone, but Power Tablet was instantly brought to the front when he looked at it, and it's definitely the line of play, the most optimal line of play, but it does require both Power Tablets to be found. So if you only hit one of them, you are going to start wondering if it's worth it. So Lost City down. Okay, so maybe we'll see it here. Yeah, there's one of the Power Tablets.
And the Cramomatic.
And was that just another Power Tablet straight up on that final draw there, maybe? Yeah, so both Power Tablets available.
And a Chromatic with a Battle VIP pass to remove Tails, but that's okay because it's been played. He continued drawing cards. Looks like he's just kind of measuring, making sure what exactly he needs to do here, double checking that HP on that Zeraora. So just interesting to see what Nico's going to be able to do to retaliate if this Psychic Leap does happen here.
Yeah, just reading the Genesect there.
Reconfirming the attack and the ability, of course.
And so we see that Power Tablet.
There's
one.
So now capping, if he's using Psychic Leap, 80 damage.
Okay, so only playing one, so not committing fully to the Psychic Leap route here, keeping one in hand. That will reduce the amount of draw potentially taken. So maybe wanting to keep it in case of another route. Maybe like an escape rope or something, but even then the Cramorant would need a Power Tablet. There is no escape rope in the list. I'm trying to think what other routes would be.
I think it's need to confirm because Edwin would have attacked last turn, right? Against the Greninja. So did he use Technoblast? So he can't right now can't attack. Maybe looking for another card. Didn't want to overcommit the Power Tablet as well. The
Technoblast to that was to knock out the Greninja, wasn't it? Because Max Miracle would have been 20 short.
110 because of the DTE. So that's currently what I believe is happening here. So we'll still need to find another card to be able to, like an Energy, for example.
For the Mew.
Which is why he may not want to sort of overcommit, but does now choose to do so with a final Fusion Strike system. And
looking for that double turn.
There it is. There's one. And yeah, that's enough for him to be able to retreat into the other Mew VMAX and actually attack with it. But does
Psychic
mean
Leap isn't the option then, is it?
No, it does mean that damaged Mew VMAX is staying on that bench. So Nico in a position where he could apply pressure to 2 Mew VMAXs and just really cause multiple issues here. The Parasol comes down as well, a fantastic card that stops the effects of attacks onto your Pokemon. Things like the Yveltal, Amazing Rev Yveltal, where it's able to take the knockout without really doing any damage and so on, or anything like the Beedrill that we've seen also play the single strike Beedrill. But yeah, just takes the knockout here, now going down the 4 rows.
Max Miracle there, I believe. I saw Edwin gesture to the Mew VMAX on the bench. Helps us to understand which attack was being used, pointing out the Max Miracle of the benched Mew VMAX was taken.
And that's Zeraora going straight into the lost zone, so increasing the number there for Nico's side of the board. This flower selecting will also take him to the 10 mark. Of course, Sableye not quite doing enough right now for that Mew VMAX on the bench. So it'll be interesting to see, which we say often, because we don't really know exactly what Nico's going to be considering. How he's going to play out this turn. Will he damage the Mew VMAX? But he's got multiple different lines of play, I think.
Yeah, interesting as well with the big Parasol on the active Mew VMAX, the Sableye not able to start sprinkling on the Genesect, which could be another route. We did see the big Parasol being played in a previous matchup where it wasn't on the active, so it was no longer in effect, but it has to be on that active Pokemon, and it protects all of all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to all of your Pokemon. So that Mew VMAX being in the active right now is protecting everything on the bench.
Yeah.
So the attack into the active Mew VMAX would again open up that Psychic Leap approach. And that's the dream scenario for Mew VMAX, is to take away all damage that's been sprinkled all over the board.
Yeah, I guess the view from Nico's side is if there's a Pokemon that's able to essentially absorb a Psychic Leap, because 2 Power Tablets have been expended already. So they're having to Psychic Leap and not really, maybe not take a KO. Isn't ideal from Edwin's side. So Nico's kind of finding opportunities to kind of force Edwin to use different resources here, meaning that some of his Pokemon, like the Snorlax, may be able to survive if they're forced to use Technoblast instead.
Yeah, that's true. And then the Psychic Leap from the bench Mew VMAX is something that it wants to do, but it's not ideal. So the Psychic Leap route, it does take away damage on the board,
Mm.
but it creates a less convenient route to victory, and that's when we start thinking about late game Roxanne's, and especially if there was a path in play from Edwin. I assume he won't play one. He's going to keep this Lost City in play for the rest of the game.
Yeah, you'd assume so.
The Roxanne wouldn't be too effective with the Genesect, so Nico in a rough spot to disrupt Edwin from his game plan. But I think that Snorlax, like you mentioned, is definitely the tankiest of the Lost Box attackers, and the one which is most likely to be able to take a hit back and survive.
Yeah, if a Technoblast isn't used. So, I mean, this is why you would use such a big attacker in some of the Lost Box decks. And, it's been a common theme now to include things like Snorlax to be able to deal heavy damage and to be able to maybe survive an attack. And this puts Edwin in an awkward position, as we kind of mentioned multiple times. Psychic Leap would do very minimal damage and wouldn't take a prize then unless he's looking to try and gust up a Comfey. So then the Snorlax could potentially, just cause awkward situations for Edwin.
There's also the prize mapping as well that Edwin's going to be thinking about, because if a Mew VMAX does go down, that's a 3 prizer. And so if you can make sure that another Mew VMAX never goes down by constantly Psychic Leaping it, then the Genesect route has to take out 7 prize cards, which is tough for Lost Box. So a lot of mapping here for Edwin as well in terms of what prizes he does give away and which ones is good for the future. So I think here we're going to be seeing a Cramorant, which is going to put some damage on the board for that Mew, and that is within range of a double Power Tablet Psychic Leap.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the 140 damage from the Spit Innocently there onto the Mew as well. So kind of putting it into range of the Snorlax as well, because the Snorlax can come up and hit for 180. Does have a Water and a Capture Energy already attached. And it's kind of, again, we mentioned it's kind of awkward scenario now. Edwin could try and take the knockout on this Cramorant, but it's just a Cramorant. It's not too much. It can't even 2-hit a Mew at its current stage. Would eventually want to try and take out the Snorlax, just to kind of limit the amount of damage that Nico could do. So yeah, it's on Edwin right now because he's in a bit of an advantageous position because he's taken 2 prizes. But still will currently need to announce 4 more attacks to be able to do so.
And he's going to be trying to do that whilst getting rid of damage on the board, because in theory, the Mew VMAX has the ability to remove all damage that you see there. And especially if he can find 2 power tablets with this hit on the Cramorant, if he goes for a Psychic Leap. As you mentioned, if he takes out the Snorlax, that takes away an option. But then we're going to start seeing potentially the next Snorlax come into play. And you do see the commitment now for that first power tablet to open up some space in the hand, or a Choreo in the hand. That's just going to be clunking it up, and we do see an Ultra Ball that's going to allow them to thin. Then that's when the next Genesect starts to come in, and a Roxanne in hand, not going to be playable. So Edwin really trying to dig now to open up the options for a Psychic Leap that is going to be able to knock out at the same time.
Yeah, and it's a little bit worrying from Edwin's side because there's only 1 more tablet remaining in his deck or in his hand on the board somewhere. But then also having to leap into a Pokemon. So he wouldn't want to leap, of course, into the VMAX. Leaping into the Mew means he then only will have that Mew VMAX remaining as well. Essentially, if he goes into a Genesect, he'll be giving up 2 prizes at the same time. So it's that catch-22 of knowing if I Psychic Leap, although I'm saving 3, I'm very likely giving up 2 prizes. And then it's on Nico to potentially try and target down the other VMAX as well, and then just take the 3 prizes potentially. Sometimes not ideal, because you want to think about your prize mapping. And if he takes 3 prizes, Edwin could find a way to maybe just constantly avoid giving another 3 prizes. But yeah.
Switcher, and that's going to guarantee the knockout with Psychic Leap here, because the Comfey is going to come into the active. That is the final switch out, though, outside of manually attaching energy and retreating that way. But this will continue that pace, will take damage out of play, and then open up the opportunity. So you can see there, Psychic Leap puts that Mew, all that damage goes away. There's going to be a Mew V going into the active.
So,
so that's going to be an easy target for the Snorlax. But as we mentioned, prize mapping-wise, that then means that the Mew VMAX is not a big issue if it gets knocked out.
I think he's just realised exactly what I just mentioned, where he actually just realised he will be giving up 2 prizes here, because very likely to, because that Snorlax is kind of set, ready to attack next turn, and just needs a Choice Belt to do so. So yeah, puts up the Genesect without any tool attachment. I don't think it mattered too much if any of them were actually promoted, because he's already used the Forest Sealstone. The Choice Belt, it won't be attacking anytime soon. So it doesn't matter as much. Maybe keeping it as options for Lost Vacuum to play and burn down cards from his hand if he draws into it, if he hasn't played it already. So it's on Nico right now to try and maybe target down that Mew VMAX, if possible.
Yeah, because if the 2-prizer goes down here, which would require a choice belt on the Snorlax, then that means, like you said, 2 prizes will be taken. And then that's where you start thinking, well, Mew VMAX is a 3-prize Pokemon, so you still need to take 2 knockouts. So going through a Mew VMAX won't be easy. And now we have the option to potentially, if with the boss's orders, you have the potential for Psychic Leap plus Power Tablet again. So there is a way to remove all that damage once again, but this now opens up the 2-2-2 line for Nico, where he can start thinking about Genesect instead.
Yeah, he does have the opportunity to use the Luminion V and that Lumineous Sign ability to kind of grab the boss if he hasn't used it already. Does attach and do the free retreat. Is identifying that there's not many maybe retreat outs right now. So it's just applying some damage to the Genesect with the Cramorant. Again, 140, leaving it on 50 HP. And it's just the position now. He does have the DT in hand, so just manually retreat. And there goes the other Rotom Phone as well, also seeing the other 2 in his deck. So, yeah, just again, applying a little bit of pressure here from Nico. But again, doesn't seem very ideal because there's an opportunity here to once again go into the Psychic Leap play. But now, not possible to take any knockouts.
Indeed.
Well, outside of the Comfey.
Yeah, so the interesting route here for Edwin might even be comfortable with the idea of giving up that Mew VMAX in the sense that you'll be able to get a return knockout the turn after. So it's mapping out the next 3 turns or so, because there's 2 different routes here. Nico can take out Genesect, take out Mew VMAX, and take out anything else. Or there's the route where they just ignore the Mew VMAX because they know it's just going to Psychic Leap away and just start focusing on Genesect. And so Nico is going to be reactive based off of the decision we see here from Edwin, whether it's a Psychic Leap remove damage route or whether it's a I'm going to get a knockout. If you want to knock out my VMAX, go for it.
Yeah, it looks like he's just evolved up his other Mew as well. So he does have a fresh Mew VMAX. Obviously can't attach any energy to it anymore because he's had to commit to the active to retreat. Does mean he could go down the route of just sort of Psychic Leap and healing that damaged Mew VMAX as well, but then of course then leaves him in a position where that Cramorant could continue attacking or find a way of giving Nico a chance to boss something else up or gust something else up to knock out or attack. So yeah, really intricate plays that we're seeing here. And here does come the Mew VMAX with the energy because that's the only one that can attack right now.
I really don't know which way he's going to go, whether he's going to go for the Psychic Leap route or whether he's going to keep it in the active, take a knockout and say, well, you can have it if you want, but that means you're not taking out my Genesect. So he's going to be attacking here, announcing he's going to be doing Max Miracle.
Yeah, he's gone for the knockout. He is going to be giving up the prizes, but of course he's now down to 2 prizes remaining. Just needs to announce 2 more attacks here, and the Snorlax is coming to the active spot. He's going to have to attack, and Nico is playing the Chorus Experiment. Yeah, it's still just really awkward spot for Nico here, just because he doesn't.
So many prizes.
Yeah, still so many prizes to take, and without the easy route of taking sort of pre-prizes with a sudden Drapion out of nowhere, he just doesn't have that option. So does have the energy attachment to the Snorlax, ready to hit the 180 with Thumping Snore, takes the knockout on this Mew VMAX in the active spot, but right now, I'm struggling to see where the final 3 prizes will be coming from.
Yeah, as we mentioned, it can't go down the Genesect route because it would have to be 2 Genesects, and that's just out of range with something like Sableye. It'd have to be 2 Sableyes back-to-back. And with that knockout, that does get rid of the big Parasol, so the bench potentially is protected. We do see the Snorlax turn to the left, as you mentioned.
There you go, yeah.
Sleep, got an L in it, so it goes to the left. We saw a lot of paralysis earlier on with the Articuno, so we've seen all the different special conditions. Well, not all of them. A lot of the special conditions.
The main ones we typically see.
The more effective ones.
Including the Confusion, which is upside down as well, which is
we saw that earlier,
cool.
Didn't we?
Yeah,
with the Yellhorn. Just burn and poison. Not really making their way here. But actually, that's a lie. I did see some Galarian wheezing down on the lower tables.
Okay.
And then Burn, unfortunately, just not quite any good cards with it on right now.
Paying dividends right now. But there's the Roxanne by Edwin's side of the board. And it's going to be really pushing Nico into a unfortunate scenario of just being able to draw 2 cards.
And that's why giving up that Mew VMAX was fine. Giving up the Mew VMAX opened up the Roxanne potential, put Nico in a really unfortunate spot, and Nico has accepted that this game is not going to work out and is going to be going on to game 2. So Edwin, just great tempo that whole way through, timed the Psychic Leaps well with the power tablets, and takes the first game.
Yeah, really, really well played by Edwin there. Being able to take game 1 of this final round of Stuttgart Regionals, putting himself in a fantastic position to make it into day 2 and hopefully progress and play into the second day. But Nico will have a lot of work to do here. There's just over 20 minutes remaining. Lost Box typically is quite a deck which takes a lot of time to kind of play games out. So it'll be interesting to see how he's going to be able to do so.
Yeah, as we mentioned at the beginning of this game, this is a win and in game, so they have to get a result here to get through to day 2. If they draw this, and they both get 18 points and just narrowly miss out on day 2. So at this point, Nico has to win 2 games with Lost Box to be able to make it through, which is a real challenge. Like you said, a slow gameplay. So he's going to be really hoping that the Mew struggles in that first turn. Something this list is very much against because it's got so much consistency in that first turn.
I mean, it could happen. We saw Edwin there struggle a little bit on the sort of turn 1, turn 2, and wasn't able to really sort of burst through, which is what you typically see with Mew decks. So it really comes down to how Nico is able to apply a lot of pressure nice and early.
It can always happen. It can always happen. You can always put a basic out front and struggle to get anything else. So that's what Nico's going to be crossing his fingers for. Something you can't really fully bet on.
No, not at all.
It can happen.
Yeah, I've seen stranger things have happened in Pokemon. So it really comes down to how Nico's able to navigate around and sort of take the knockouts. There's the Oricorio prize. Ideally, maybe Nico would have wanted to see Edwin start that and not really much more beyond that, because that's pretty much an easy KO. But yeah, both sides not really prizing anything too crazy or too major. We do see Nico start with the Snorlax in the active position, but does have that Battle VIP pass. It's coming straight down onto the board as well. But yeah, if I was Edwin, I'm in a comfortable position right now, and against a deck which slowly takes prizes, and you've got typically big bulky Pokemon anyway. So in a good spot, double VIP. Nico kind of making very quick decisions right now. Of course, with the time sort of remaining. If it does happen to become a draw, both players will very likely finish in points. So that still points towards a Worlds invite as well. And Nico's already in a fantastic position. Edwin, of course, will be looking to kind of also gain the points for that road to Yokohama point structure, being able to get that 350 as soon as possible, because it takes off all the pressure from these players. Yeah,
and we spoke about how important this first turn is for Nico, and hoping that Edwin struggles on that first turn. And I think we're all going to be staring at that face-down hand, trying to burn holes through it and see what we can see on the other side. And any fans of Nico out there will be hoping that it's just a whole load of, I don't know, cross switches and Roxannes.
Yeah.
And there is cards in this deck that aren't very playable on the first turn, but for the most part, Mew is structured with so many insta-playable cards, and early on should go in Edwin's favour. But we do see...
Let's have a little glimpse. There's a couple of VMAXs now.
They're not playable. Power tablets
There's an Ultra Ball with a... Is that a Chromatic as well?
Yeah, that has to be a good Chromatic right there.
Yeah, so he has a Marnie, so he can continue kind of drawing through some aspects.
Yeah.
I think if you're Edwin in this position, you probably just want to be even using that Chromatic at some stage, but he does choose the Ultra Ball away.
I guess he wants to keep that power tablet for potential later psychic leaps.
Yeah,
so thinking ahead, not to get rid of too many of those at this stage.
It's very true. But again, from this scenario, he's very likely to have to play that Marnie and see what he's able to draw into.
Yeah.
So not ideal. Does prize double VIP pass.
And a
drawing
Genesect,
into those.
And an Ultra Ball. So the outs for basic Pokemon are a little bit thin.
Grabs the Mew, sort of identifying that Genesect there's still 3 of in the deck.
Yeah.
So more likely to kind of draw into them as well.
And having the Mew guaranteed for next turn, just in case the miraculous Mirage Gate comes out and the Snorlax knockout comes out. So there is potential for a Mew to get knocked out. And having the Mew to evolve next turn is more important than having a load of Genesect for draw at this stage, because guaranteeing an attack and starting that process is probably the bigger priority.
Yeah, because Edwin's going to be seeing another 5 cards here. The odds are that he will see a way to Genesect in some shape or form, and we do see a Quick Ball. There you go.
There you
So
go.
it's something. He's got energy to attach as well. Double quick ball, so he's able to put his hand down to just a 1 that he needs to, should he choose to do so, and just can start using Fusion Strike system
Can
to
attach that energy as well.
Well, that's it.
So
Exactly. So to burst through to draw up to 4. Pretty good money in all honesty there. And Nico sort of staring down at the board where double Mew, another Genesect, maybe potentially holding the extra quick ball right now might be an option, but I can't see him not kind of eventually deciding to play it.
Yeah,
But again,
I'm sure Edwin's had a lot of success today with getting those cards out because his list looks so good for first turns for Mew. You know, sometimes Mew can get a little bit clunky. People think, oh, you know, I draw so many cards, I may as well take it out and find a way to get to them. But the consistency here, very much 4 quick ball, 4 ultra ball, 4 battle VIP pass. The 3 Rotom phone even is great for it. The 4 chromatic. You know, we've got the Forest Seal Stone. And even just having Marnies as your main supporter that you're going to be using gives you options to get and see more cards.
Yeah, exactly. And here we go. He did have to... He's holding on to that Roxanne because he saw how vital it was in Game 1 once he did lose a Mew VMAX. Choosing to Fusion Strike system first before playing that second Ultra Ball and having to discard another Mew V there as well. So now does have the double Mew, double Genesect. There's the path to the peak, which is interesting. But again, wanting to try and limit Nico's side of the ball with that Radiant Greninja, now not being able to use concealed cards. And as we mentioned, Nico doesn't actually have any outs to stadiums.
Indeed, so that path will stick. Concealed cards is offline. A capture energy coming out, so that's a retreat option as well. And we mentioned before what the strategy has to be here. It has to be an aggressive Mirage Gate plan. Cramorant at this stage, you know, it's all well and good, but you really want to be getting those big knockouts on a V before it evolves, where possible, as that Mew is sitting in the active spot. So if a few, 3 Comphase flower selectings here and a Chorus Experiment would be enough to start activating the Mirage Gate, and you know, with that you just hope that you find some other useful bits and bobs.
Yeah, it is sometimes a bit of a stretch, but it's completely possible. I've seen it, you know, these decks just burst through using all of those Lost Zone mechanic type cards to be able to kind of allow certain combo cards like the sort of Mirage Gates and so on. Right. But yeah, I think we just saw Primate Wisdom as well, and it looks like it's just a pass over, and yeah, Nico just not able to kind of just running out of steam when he's trying to get going here.
Brilliant.
Edwin, I think that's why he played the path. He does have the Lost Vacuum, which he's just played down there to remove the path as well. So just giving himself the one out for himself there, because he knew what he was holding on to, and just limiting Nico.
Yeah, just one turn without concealed cards was enough, and I think that was a quick ball to get rid of the Cramomatic. Yep. Can always be quite tough to tell which way round that is, but the deck search implies a quick ball, and we can see, is that a Genesect going to be going down? And so that's going to help with the draw engine. As we mentioned, the path has been removed, and we saw that Lost City be so effective, not only in this match, but earlier in the day when we saw Mew VMAX beating out the Lost Box, taking away vital cards, vital attackers, using that Lost City. Yes, it does increase their Lost Zone count, so can work against you in a certain way. But realistically, if you start getting rid of, say, the Greninja, the Snorlaxes, Charizard and other Lost Boxes, you start to take away their big options.
So yeah, he's just kind of drawn up with Fusion Strike system now. Does find a Forest Seal Stone yet again with that Star Alchemy ability to be able to just pick any card he wants from his deck. So if there's an energy that might be missed, or a Mew VMAX that is missed, he's able to grab that at any one stage. Of course, only plays the one copy. We've seen a lot of lists more recently sort of play the double copy. I guess maybe when it's heavier on the path, they just want to make sure that they have an out to it. Of course, if Nico was playing a Lost Vacuum, he could remove that and kind of nullify that opportunity to kind of just grab any card he wants. And the Lost Cities come down as well, so we're likely to see... It does help to bump Nico's Lost Zone cards up, but at this stage, you know, Edwin's going to be taking prizes as well. So, and there's the Mew VMAX just come down, ready to start swinging away and really sort of apply pressure to Nico's side. As a Lost Zone player or Lost Box player, you are the one who wants to be applying pressure as early as possible, and he's just not been able to get that spit innocently off from the lost zone with 4.
Speaking of early pressure, Forest Sealstone used straight away to try and find the out here. I wonder if he had a cross switcher available and he's able to cross switcher that, or he's just actually just setting up the Mew VMAX to bring in the Max Miracle as an attack option.
Yeah, okay.
Smart usage of the Forest Sealstone to guarantee an attack and also guarantee a next attack, where Techno Blast in this list can be quite tricky to get around. There's not many switch outs.
Yeah, and just Nico also applying that card straight to the lost zone there. So now we see the lost zone count go up to 5. We'll be going up to 6 with this flower selecting. Yeah, and it's just a really, really interesting dynamic to play when you're using Lost City in your own deck, because if it stays out and Nico's also able to take a knockout, you're actually lost zoning your own Pokemon as well, and it's obviously not applying any additional benefits for you. But for Nico, as he's ramping up these lost zone numbers, it's actually about to now activate Mirage Gate a lot earlier than anticipated.
Yeah, Lost City typically used to get rid of that Drapion that you're scared of. If that comes out and gets multiple turns in a row, it's going to win a game for him. But if you put it out, knock out that Drapion, it's out of play forever. And similarly, the case here for all of the attackers in the Lost Box. That Comfey didn't need to be sent to the Lost Zone per se, but the Lost City was played down to help with the draw as well.
Yep.
It won't be bumped at all. There's no stadium bounce for Nico. So at this stage, the rules in this game are if a Pokemon is knocked out, they go to the Lost Zone.
Yeah, and that's just the Lost Provisions ability there, allowing Spit Innocently to attack for 0 energy cost, dealing 110 damage after a boss onto that Genesect. There's a Cramomatic, discarding the Choice Belt, and getting that heads, that lovely 4 that's pointing up at us right now, getting any card he wants, so even more ways to just pick and choose how his deck is going to run.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. The Forest Sealstone is essentially guaranteed heads Cramomatic in a weird way. So there we go, another card of anyone's choice, and you see the Choice Belt going, kind of irrelevant in this matchup. There's a few V options when you're playing against Lost Box. He knows about the Luminion. There is that potential for Drapion, which he's assuming at this stage isn't in the deck. But there the cross switches come out. And it looks like going to be just looking to get rid of the draw engine rather than taking away the attackers at this stage.
Yeah, Nico didn't do too much on his actual turn itself. So being able to take out the Comfey, that flower selecting, limiting those options for Nico's side of the board has been targeted down by Edwin here right now with 2 Mew VMAX ready to go. Of course, now still looking to try and do Max Miracle to have to knock it out. Power Psychic Leap not being able to do enough damage at all, but not necessary to do so right now. But has that utility option later because of that Mew V just sat waiting on the bench. So again, just in a very commanding position because Nico's just unfortunately just slowing down based on what he's actually able to do with his deck.
Yeah.
And there goes another card.
We just see the Cross Fusion Strike selecting Max Miracle on the bench Mew VMAX, and that's going to set up another awkward bench Pokemon to move forward. Normally you want to be putting a Comfey forward to start that flower selecting, but Cramorant just going straight forward. And that's going to be another commanding position here for Edwin. It's very similar to last game of that 4 prizes to 6, where Edwin doesn't look like he's going to be taking many steps away from just knockout, knockout, knockout.
Yeah, it's again, because he's not been able to apply too much pressure, he can't really force awkward spots for Edwin right now. You know, both those Mew VMAXs are fresh. Both have energy attached. They can free retreat between one another, so that if it ever has to use a bigger attack like Techno Blast from the Genesect Vs themselves, maybe to knock out like a Snorlax, for example, it doesn't really matter too much just because it can just keep rotating between the attackers themselves. We do see Nico just come down with a Chorus Experiment now. We'll be taking his Lost Zone numbers up to 9, I believe, once he's made his decision on which to Lost Zone, which cards to Lost Zone. But there's no other attackers over this Cramorant. It's just going to potentially be doing 110 damage with that Spit Innocently. It just doesn't really open up too many doors right now for Nico.
Yeah, a lot of work needed here for Nico. When we watched this matchup earlier, it was a very similar game where it looked like Mew was ahead the whole time. And I think it was Robin Schultz was playing the Lost Box. And he was 1 turn away from winning, but the switch cart was the difference for the numbers on the Genesect. So Genesect 190 hit points. With a few Spit Innocentlies and a few Sableyes, you can start taking out multiple Genesects, but the switch cart can often fix those numbers for you to make it just too much. So there is that still available for Edwin, just to put it even that further out of reach. We do see a flower selecting going to be happening here, which will allow for that 10 in the lost zone, activating all possible options in the deck.
Is eyeing up potentially using maybe Sableye to sprinkle some damage on that benched Genesect there. Will level up the game to 4 prizes remaining each. But again, he's got to start thinking about how would he take the final 4 prizes. I guess the Genesects are still sat there waiting on the bench right now. The Mew is still a very squishy 180 HP Pokemon that Snorlax will be able to take a one-hit KO on. So I guess just by having a few options, having already done some damage with that Cramorant, it's opened a couple more doors than I thought there would be.
Yeah, and you've also got to think about stuff like Roxanne, which normally would be your comeback mechanic in the Lost Box, but it's just not going to be effective here because the Genesect draw will be too strong and it will be able to get Edwin back into whatever he needs most likely.
So,
we see that retreat there, and I assume that Psychic Energy on the Sableye was through a Mirage Gate?
No, it was it was actually a hand attachment, but it was a Mirage Gate to the Water Energy to the Convey.
The other way around.
Yeah.
I knew one of them was Mirage Gate.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, here comes the 120 Lost Mine attack by Sableye, putting the damage onto the Genesect and the remaining... I think he's spread a few across the 2 remaining Genesects. One, of course, on one of the Genesects, just to kind of put it in range of the Snorlax, and the other one down, I think that looks like 3 damage counters on it, to put it to 160. Again, looking for multiple ways of trying to splash some damage on. There is one switch cart in Edwin's list as well that you've been alluding to in the other matchups that we've seen. So yeah, Nico just identifying that's his way of victory right now. He's going to have to try and target those Genesects because they typically don't go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, because the original Genesect that got knocked out, that needed 8 damage counters, so it's a split of either 1 and 3 or 2 and 2.
Yep.
It's really hard to tell with those dice, but I think
it looks like
it's 1 and 3.
Yeah, I that's what I think I see.
I guess the 1 would allow for Snorlax without a choice belt to knock out. Other than that, the
160 doesn't make too much of an issue right now.
No.
But yeah, it's one of those where it's you got to put some damage on. There's no real point necessarily to put it on the Mew V maxes because he's not going to be targeting it down. And again, that Mew V is already within range of the Snorlax, so it's just constantly applying that pressure here. That Parasol has come down now, though, again protecting the bench Mons from any sort of effects of attacks, which is a fantastic draw on Edwin's side of the board. Now Nico unable to use Sableye.
Another heads.
Yeah, he's getting all the heads right now.
Have I told you, though, about the day when I played Mew VMAX and never again? Played 3 matches, 17 of 19 tails. I'm never touching that again. And when I see these heads coming out from people like Edwin, I do believe there is some kind of I'm a better player, I get more heads luck.
Yeah, I think I heard it last time from you as well. But it's a story that will always go down in your memory because, I mean, you want to hit those 50-50s.
It was the last day I played Mew VMAX. I'm never playing it again because it does feel a bit like that sometimes, but you can't rely on those heads.
No.
Like these top players aren't relying on the heads to win. Sometimes they're like, well, I wish I had it because I needed something. But especially now with the Forest Seal Stone, it does add in a bit of guaranteed card search. So you've seen mostly the Cramomatic is just there to make it easier to get what you need. Yeah,
and we've seen with the Mew decks and Mew cards now, it's also now available in a League Battle deck, so it's become more accessible for people, which is fantastic. When it first released, it was very much a card and deck that was quite difficult to get a hold of, and quite pricey at the same time. But, Pokemon making things accessible for everyone, which is fantastic to see. As you can see here, we've seen Mew multiple times this weekend, actually. Maybe as many as Lugias that we've seen.
It might be the best deck at this event right now from what we've seen. But that we have seen a very small sample size. But walking around, we have seen a lot of Mew around. Mew, Lost Box, and Lugia seem to be the 3 best decks here. Lugia mainly struggling just because it's got such a big target on its back. So there's a lot of rogue decks out there that are taking it down. And every deck has changed the list to just be a bit more favourable into the Lugia matchup.
Yeah, and there's Edwin again, just going for the Max Miracle yet again, taking the knockout on that Sableye, going now down to 3 prizes. Again, sort of putting himself in an advantageous position in this second game of round 9. Nico does promote the Cramorant to the active spot and plays a Chorus Experiment. A number of options here. Seen a couple of energies, the Quick Ball. Yeah, it looks like he's getting rid of the Capture Energy and the Quick Ball there as he chooses to keep hold of it. Looks like an Escape Rope. But there's the Sableye again, but of course can use that attack because he can get the Parasol out of the active spot if he does have an Escape Rope.
Yeah, exactly. That Escape Rope really combination with the Sableye would be a great way to start sprinkling, as we see the Escape Rope being used straight away. And that's going to be to bring up the Snorlax. So with that Snorlax in the active, it's not going to be as easy as Sableye. So we're going to be looking to attack with Snorlax here. So recognizing that the Genesect route might not be the most viable of options, so maybe looking to go down the Snorlax attack route. But again, we do see the ability to remove energy from that Mew. The Psychic Leap is available. There's a Mew V on the bench. So all this damage could very quickly be removed from that Mew V Max.
Yeah, correct. That Psychic Leap just being able to give Edwin just a bit more utility and just making sure his Pokemon are healed. There's the Thumping Snore attack, dealing 210 to that active Mew V Max there. Of course, as you mentioned, he can Psychic Leap, but wouldn't be taking a knockout here on this Snorlax, despite it being very much heavily asleep at this position, because Nico has not hit double heads to wake it up either. So let's see how Edwin's going to play out this turn, whether he maybe targets down. There's still that Comfey just on the bench there, which is an easy target with 1 Power Tablet.
Yeah, there's also potential just to leave it on the bench. If you put the other Mew V Max with the big Parasol on into the active, does ask a lot of questions of Lost Box. And at this stage, the tempo of Mew V Max, you need 3 more turns of attacks to win this game. And that would leave just two after the Snorlax. Oh, there's double Power Tablet.
Okay.
Is
committing this time and continues to draw with Fusion Strike System.
Looking for a Boss's Orders, maybe?
Yeah, Boss's Orders, potentially for some form of cross switcher. He does have the cross switchers. Targets the Comfey.
Interesting, yeah. Take away that draw engine again. The Comfey have been the target this game, and will be going into the Lost Zone again. So that'll be 3 Comfey in the Lost Zone from these knockouts, I believe.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's already 13 in the Lost Zone for Nico, so maybe less of an issue for him to be able to use the combo cards. But yes, kind of taking away the opportunity to see more and burn through more of his deck. Some of those more, less useful cards in this matchup. Edwin there, free retreating back into the damaged Mew, and is just pointing at the Psychic Leap there.
Fantastic.
Will be just healing off all of that damage and running away back into the deck. Promotes the VMAX.
Big Parasol.
Yeah, and just now is safe again from any other further attacks.
Yeah, just wonderful play here from Edwin, and you can see how both players are reacting to the previous turn. There's so much you have to wait and watch and see, and the fact that the Snorlax was used as the attacker, opened up a whole new route. It wasn't the Escape Rope Sableye route, which would have required different maneuvers. So every decision is reactive to what the opponent is trying, and so it makes it quite hard to plan ahead, because both these decks have many different options on what they can do.
Yeah, so it's just on Nico right now to kind of, again, look at this Chorus's experiment. Number of options there. Looks like the Scoop Up Net and the Cramorant's going. Wanting to keep hold of that Scoop Up Net there, I believe. Oh, no, so Choice Belt, that was there as well. Yeah, it's number of options, number of item cards that are available. There's a second Snorlax available and the Escape Rope again. Yeah,
the Escape Rope now is really important, because Escape Rope will bring up a 2-prize Pokemon that can be knocked out by the Snorlax. So we see all of the bench Pokemon on Edwin's side will be 1-hit KO, except for the Genesect in the middle. So that Genesect with the Choice Belt will be knocked out.
It's actually in range as well, yeah.
Yeah, so everything in range of that Snorlax with the Escape Rope. And you see opting to send the Mew up.
Does want to keep hold of the Fusion Strike System ability to continue drawing through cards if he ever gets any form of disruption from Nico's side, because obviously Nico does play the Roxanne as well. I think that Edwin might have seen it when Nico probably discarded it at some stage or sort of grabbed it at some stage. So yeah, he's just kind of giving up this Mew, which isn't too much of an issue. Can always get another Mew out. having already chucked one back into the deck.
An interesting interaction there with the escape rope that didn't end up happening because there was no Sableye, but may have chosen a different route based off if it was a Sableye or a Mew. Because maybe we'd want to knock out the Mew and leave a Genesect in the active to go for a Sableye Sprinkle. So the fun thing about the escape rope is it forces your opponent to choose first.
Yep.
And so you can start changing your decision based off of that. But on this occasion, the decision was always going to be send that Snorlax in and do a thumping snore.
Yeah, so back to even prizes here. I'm just sort of reminding everyone, as we've seen on our timer, it's gone to 0. Not quite sure where time right now has been called or when it's been called, but just need to confirm. Nico just confirming that it's asleep. But Nico's way of victory right now will be to use Mirage Gate in combination maybe with Ordinary Rod, because I'm not too sure how many energies are actually in his deck right now. And also finding access to that boss's orders. Does, of course, have Luminium V, but Edwin may be able to play around that with his own path to the peak, for example. But Edwin will just need to announce 2 attacks here. You know, it's just single prizes, take a knockout. This Mew VMAX can't go down, but at this current moment in time has to use Technoblast.
Yeah, and as we mentioned before, both these players need to win. This is a win and in game. So if it goes to Nico here, they will draw, and both of them just bubble out of that day 2. And we see the Oricorio coming down. That reduces 20 damage, which could be relevant when it comes to one of the Genesects, maybe?
I think with the Snorlaxes both having choice belts, they do 210
and
minus 20 with the Oricorio is 190.
It's exactly the
perfect numbers right there.
And then you've got the potential for Oricorio being an option to send forward if an escape rope comes out, because that's a 1 prize and they need more than that. So the Oricorio there is only an option for the escape rope and not for that protection on damage. But again, that's the perfect maths right now. That forces the best scenario. So that definitely forces a boss's orders out of Nico, which, as you mentioned, Luminium the main route to get it.
Yeah, exactly. And there still is a bench spot available for Nico to be able to do so. But it'll be interesting to see how Edwin is able to play this round. It looks like he's just deciding to retreat into the Genesect, not take the knockout because he doesn't want to
switch cart. There we go.
And he heals it off. But I mean, it doesn't make too much of a difference right now.
No.
But now has access to just use Technoblast again, take this knockout here,
maybe
go
a
down
lost
to
vacuum
1.
if he has a lost vacuum.
He's already used it when he pathed, I believe.
Right at the beginning, wasn't it?
Pathed the Greninja to stop him from being able to use.
That's why he's got 3 in the lost side, isn't it?
Exactly. So yeah, the Genesect and the 2 cards. So here we go. There's a Roxanne once again from Edwin. No real draw cards from Nico's side. All the Comfey is pretty much in the lost zone.
This is exciting right here. The final game of the day here at Stuttgart. We're in round 9. This is to decide who makes it into day 2 out of these 2 here. Edwin and Nico have been fighting their way through the bracket, the Swiss bracket today. And we have had a few content pieces with Nico, the interviews. We'll be seeing more of him tomorrow, definitely with the interviews. But the question now is, will he be able to deny Edwin of that day 2 by getting the 18 points and also improving his position to get more points?
Yeah, exactly. And Edwin obviously looking to try and close out this series and round 9 game is just looking to Technoblast this Snorlax here. So Nico, from a 2-card hand, will have to find multiple cards here. Does promote the Cramorant, and we'll just draw the card and see if there's any way to get 3 energies on that Snorlax. It's looking really tough here. There's a way of retreating there from the Primate Wisdom in switch carting. Does have the air balloon as well. Yeah,
air balloon, and that's going to be it.
That's it. Edwin has been able to close the game out in our final round of Swiss in day 1, making it into day 2 on a 20-point record, I believe now.
Yeah,
putting himself in a fantastic position, ready for tomorrow.
And we mentioned about this matchup, the Lost Box can be favoured in it if it has the right cards, but this Lost Box that we've seen piloted by Nico was more favoured towards the Lugia V-Star matchup and struggled a little bit with Mew VMAX, and we saw exactly why. Disruption, no stadium bounce, the inability to swing turns with the Drapion, everything going in favour of Mew VMAX, and that Roxanne at the end there just shows how effective the disruption capabilities of this Mew deck are. That was beautifully well played, though.
Yeah, it was fantastically well played by Edwin, and we've seen Mew in a few different flavors now. And as we mentioned when we first saw Mew at the very much start of the day, it's evolved over time. It's still very much a tier 1 type deck, you know, one of the best, one of the ones we expect to see do well, going from Fusion Strike cards to be able to, like Meloetta with Alyssa Sparkle, and then moving and evolving into the 4 DTE, becoming more defensive.
That, Meloetta was like I don't want to include that. Yeah, it's a terrible card. And then that became a swing card for turn 1. So this Mew deck has evolved, and we've now, like you said, multiple flavors right now. Disruption, double turbo energy, and fusion builds. It seems like Disruption is coming out on top, as we just saw there. But I want to know from our main man, Shay, what he thinks of the deck. So we're going to have a little deck analysis, and then we'll come back to you after that.
Right then, guys, you're joined with me, Shay Burton, and I'm going to introduce to you one of the best decks in this format, Mew VMAX. Mew VMAX is a terrifying Pokemon, 310 HP and a free retreat cost. The main attack we'll be using is this one here. Cross Fusion Strike for 2 colorless energy will let you use any one of your Fusion Strike Pokemon's attacks as this attack, and we have some good ones, such as Genesect V's Techno Blast. However, Genesect V is not just here for its attack. It has a really good ability, Fusion Strike System. This lets you draw up to the amount of Fusion Strike Pokemon you have in play. So if you have 6 Fusion Strike Pokemon in play and no cards in your hand, you can draw 6 cards. And bear in mind this stacks, meaning if you have 2, 3, or maybe even 4 of these in play, you can draw upwards of 20 cards a turn. Honestly, gets a little bit bonkers. Meloetta is also a really good backup attacker in the Mew VMAX deck. For 2 energy, it does Murderous Echo, which does 70 for each Fusion Strike energy you have in play. This gets really mad when you consider Alyssa Sparkle lets you attach 2 energies from the deck. What this means is that if you're going second as a Mew VMAX player, you can actually start swinging for upwards of 240 damage turn 1. And it's this turn 1 swing that makes Mew VMAX a real contender in this format, meaning you can take 2 prizes going second on your first turn of the game. Terrifying. There are also builds of Mew VMAX that opt to not play the Meloetta package at all. This lets you play disruption cards such as Marnie, Roxanne and Path to the Peak, all hoping to disrupt your opponent just enough to where your Mew VMAX can carry you through the rest of the game. Right then, so I'm Shay Byrne, and that's been our quick look at Mew VMAX, the fastest, most terrifying deck here in my opinion. But now it's time to go back to the regionals.
Thank you very much, Shay. That's kept us up to date with the Mew VMAX deck. And speaking of the Mew VMAX deck, we have Edwin here who just piloted it into day 2. How are you feeling?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I started the season off pretty bad. Just didn't come close to any points even the last 2 regionals. So it feels amazing to get there now.
Yeah, and I could see throughout that game you were trusting the disruption that you have with the deck. Why did you go for this particular Mew VMAX build where there's a little bit of disruption involved?
Yeah, it feels like I have more control over the game. Like the 3 Marnie against Lost Box is amazing. Just Marnie them every turn and then Roxanne at the end, and it usually works out. And against Lugia it also feels great with the Path to the Peak, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we saw right there against the Lost Box, no Drapion on the other side. Did you know that was going to be the case before the game?
No. I saw a bit of their deck, but I didn't know exactly what was in it.
Yeah. I've been wondering, because with the Mew VMAX, you're always worried about the Drapion. Yeah. Is every game, the first sort of half of the first game, you're thinking, when's the Drapion coming? When's the Drapion coming?
Yeah. Honestly, I haven't faced a single Drapion yet. So
oh, really?
A bit lucky. Yeah, I used to play Heroes Medal, which makes your Mew VMAX has 2 prizes, which kind of helped, but it was clunky. So now I just hope I don't face them, and that works.
And you managed to dodge and weave past all the Drapion. Maybe you'll see some tomorrow in day 2, because you've now made day 2.
Yeah.
And that was a big game for you there, the winning in. How are you feeling on the feature table? Because there's a little bit more nerves involved, right?
Yeah, it was my first time on stream. Yeah, it was very different. Big table.
It's very big. You have to reach for everything.
Yeah, but it was great. Yeah. good game. So
yeah, and I
liked
guess
it.
because you're always in control throughout the game, it felt comfortable once you started getting going. Once you've done that first few turns, it felt good. And I guess because we're coming towards the end of the day, I guess, is there anything you want to say about the event as a whole? How's it been, the experience here in Stuttgart?
I love it. We haven't had much time here in the city. We arrived Friday at 11 in the night. So yeah, one game of testing, then to bed, and early morning.
Yeah, but the venue here has been amazing.
Yeah,
it's so big,
great.
and like, sounds really silly, but everything is very comfortable here, which is something that some bigger events, once you start growing, it becomes quite tricky. There's loads of room here and loads of space for people. Especially the tables are quite wide.
So much space on the tables. It's so nice.
It sounds silly to say that, but it can be quite cramped in some events, right? And they've done that really well here, where you guys are.
In the
got loads
past,
of space.
we have been like mat over mat, no space at all. This feels great. Yeah.
But, I'm going to say goodbye to you, but I'll say hello to you tomorrow when you make day 2. It's a pleasure to have you on here, and we'll be back in a bit where we'll close out the show. So we'll see you in a moment, but thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.